Welcome to Jacksonian America. This is Melinda Klein. Jacksonian America, as the 1830s became known, brought major changes to society and politics. As Indian nations were moved out of the South and Western fringe, his appeal grew among frontier farmers and plantation slave owners. At the same time, Jackson refused to compromise democratic ideals if it meant keeping slavery as an institution for Southerners. The slave states faced with this new opposition struggled to define their relationship to the federal government so that local power could not be diminished. Andrew Jackson was the first in a long line of presidents boasting of their humble origins and furthered their careers by denouncing what they called the privileges enjoyed by wealthy Easterners. Through the sheer force of his personality, Andrew Jackson exemplified these dramatic changes in the political landscape. In this election of 1824, while Jackson had won the popular vote, he did not have enough electoral votes to become president. Therefore, this responsibility fell to the House of Representatives to select a president. This strengthened Adams' popularity and the House, which gave him the presidency. This is remembered as the corrupt bargain. Andrew Jackson was furious. Like other Americans, he promoted the fear that the government was in trouble. Unlike the founding fathers, Jackson believed that the president should have the popular majority in votes. This position was powerful by 1828, as he had swore revenge, and he was made a hero by frontier supporters. In 1835, Mexican President and General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna abolished the Constitution of 1824 and proclaimed a new constitution that reduced the power of many of the provincial governments and increased the power of the presidency. Since the end of hostilities with Spain 10 years before, the Mexican government, and Santa Anna in particular, had been eager to reassert its control over the entire country and control of Texas, as it was seen as particularly important, as Santa Anna rightly perceived the province to be vulnerable to America's westward expansion. With the election of 1828, Andrew Jackson allied himself with John C. Calhoun. Together they built a coalition that defeated the re-election of John Quincy Adams. As president, Jackson had his share of unpopularity. He chose as his Secretary of State Martin Van Buren. He was a fair advisor and paid well, but the rest of his cabinet was filled with old friends who were unfit for the positions they held. This was true in his civil service appointments as well. This became known as the spoils system. Another incident leaving Jackson with a tarnished image was the Peggy Eaton scandal, or the Petticoat Wars. There was growing talk that centered on Jackson's old friend, John Henry Eaton, who at middle age married a tavern keeper's daughter. The flirtatious 29-year-old Peggy in 1829 had been married, but her husband recently committed suicide over rumors of the affair with Eaton. Jackson was a Democrat, and his constituency, mainly frontier farmers and small businessmen, had elected him into office. His political theory held that government should offer its citizens equal protection and equal benefits to, well, let's say unspoken here, white males, regardless of class or wealth. In overturning Cherokee Nations versus Georgia, this laid the way for formal removal of Indians within states under the Indian Removal Act of 1830. This law suited the president, as Jackson was unyielding to the plight and resistance of Native Americans in what he saw as land that could be used by farmers and the growing middle and working class, his voters and constituency. When Native Americans refused to leave their lands under the state and local pressures and to obey Jackson and the Supreme Court ultimatums, better armed U.S. troops forced during the 1830s Indians to be removed from their lands. After Jackson, President Martin Van Buren upheld similar treatments of Native Americans. During 1838-39, nearly 16,000 Indians began the journey that they called the Trail on Which We Cried. 4,000 of them died of malnutrition and disease in the course of the 116-day forced march. In comparison with slaves in Cuba, Jamaica, Brazil, and other New World plantation societies, North American slaves seldom went into organized armed revolts. When they did organize and revolt, this opened wide cracks in the mutual understanding of paternalism, a theory that supported slavery and the future of Africans in America. From the 1820s, and especially after the Nat Turner Rebellion, racists promoted blacks as incompetent, untrustworthy, and secretive, individuals who pretended to be loyal to white families and children whom they cared for, while awaiting the chance to steal from or poison them. Democrats pronounced blacks to be unfit citizens of the white republic. Even hotter on the political topic was suffrage, voting. Should free blacks vote? But the majority believed that blacks needed exclusion from full citizenship to protect the nation. However, some, like William Lloyd Garrison, felt differently and spoke up about this issue in particular. From the 1820s, with the influence of the Second Great Awakening, reform associations that included women targeted personal habits in society, such as dress, diet, conventional beliefs about sexuality, the status of women, and institutions such as schools, churches, and slavery. Their efforts often brought women out of the home and into public life. For the 20 years between 1830 and 1850, 2.3 million immigrants entered the United States. Most were from Germany, Britain, and Scandinavia. Two major driving forces brought immigrants to America. Number one, the Irish potato famine from 1847. Number two, the European revolutions of 1848. These two economic and political realities led millions to leave their homes in hope of creating a better life in America. The daguerreotype is one of the earliest types of photographs. It was the first commercially successful film type put into use. The daguerreotype is named after one of its inventors, French artist and chemist Louis Daguerre, who announced its perfection in 1839 after years of research.